Hello, everyone. How are you this evening? So, one of the things I do just to kind of keep my brain active is I read a lot. I read a lot of books. Not just Twitter posts or you online articles. I read a lot of actual physical books. And I finished one the other day that I kind of didn't know existed until not that long ago, and then I kind of picked it up and I got excited about it. Because it's this book you see right behind me, Doom Guy: Life in First Person by John Romero. And if you don't know who John Romero is and you're a video game person, John Romero, if you play first person shooters, is one of those people you absolutely owe the entire genre to. He's one of the guys that came up with Commander Keen series, Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake. I mean, you go down the list and he was around it. But more importantly, he kind of made the stuff actually work across multiple platforms. So that's John right there in his Wikipedia page. He was one of the co-founders of id Software. They did Wolfenstein 3D, Doom, Doom 2, Hex, and Quake. You go down the list, and those guys did a bunch. He and John Carmack were fantastic engineers. I mean, amazing software engineers. And they chose to spend their career, applying that to video games. Won a whole series of awards. I mean, MIT Tech Review, Innovators Under 35, number one game, most influential person in Facebook and social games, number one games.com 2011. Lifetime achievement from, you go down the list and he's won it. A list of games that is just unreal. So I wanted to kind of go through it a little bit and talk about it. Just because I don't think people realize just what kind of unsung hero this guy is from the early days of the gaming industry, especially on home computers. He did a bunch of started back in '82. I mean, it goes so far back, where he was the programmer, designer, art and sound for a game called Dodgem, Scout Search. If you go down this list, it's just like a huge list of stuff you used to be able to download off of BBSs when dial-up modems were all the rage. These are all a bunch of shareware games. A few that he actually sent into magazines where you'd have to actually type them in. Like see these A plus magazine ones, you would actually get the code in the magazine. You'd have to sit down and type it in yourself, and hope you transcribed it properly, because otherwise you're going to get a bug. It's not going to work. James Clavell's Shogun for Infocom. I mean, that goes so far back. Um, Dangerous Dave and the Desired Pirates Hideout. He was a really creative guy, because if you look at the games that are here, like Zork Zero, the computers were not what they are today. This is 82 through 90, 1990, right? You're not even at 1990 yet. Now here we get to 1990. But computers were not the things we get today. They were much different. So he was squeezing for some of these games. He was squeezing out everything the computer could actually do to get some of these to work. And it was all on subscription discs, or stuff he was sending to magazines and getting paid $400 or $500 to do. Even as a teenager, he was getting paid pretty good money to do some of these things. So where was he? He was born in 1967, so he was sending stuff in 82, trying to get it published. Was 15, 16 years old. He's not terribly old when he started. And then you get up to 1990, you're still at Infocom, soft disk publishing, where all these different games coming out just one after another. But look how often they are. Like 1989, he was involved in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 releases in a single year. That's insane by today's standards. You couldn't do that. I mean, the games are different then than they are now, obviously, but you wouldn't be able to. 11 in a single year. That's nuts. Then he goes over to Apogee Software, where he's involved in Commander Keen. Now, this is where you couldn't really get scrolling to work right on the PC, but he was working on it. He and his buddy, John Carmack. By the way, to get some of this stuff to work, these guys had to work in assembly language. I mean, that's getting down to close to the processor. I've worked in assembly. It is not for the weak of heart. It is absolutely horrific to work in. Alfredo's Stupendous Surprise, Xenopods, Lord Axe. You go down the list, it just gets nuttier and nuttier. Still over at Softdisk, Apogee, Forms, it's all over in the early days of video games. Biomenace, and then now we're going to get serious. Doom. Well, let's go back here. Wolfenstein 3D. If you're not familiar with Wolfenstein, this was when it was at Apogee. Wolfenstein was the first sort of 3D, really 2.5D first-person shooter game. This was it. This is where the genre got its start. And it's all due to this guy right here, to John Romero. And now the interesting bit was he wasn't happy with what that was. He saw the potential. He's like, "This is cool. But we can do better, right? We can make it better." Some people were kind of like not happy that he was working on this because, well, Germans, you don't want to really even bring up Germans in '83. They were still way too close to World War II. But you got to slaughter Germans, so it was a lot of fun, right? So you got to do some fun things. But it was using 2D sprites to do basically 2.5D and kind of sort of make a 3D video game first person shooter out of it. But he was like, "Oh my god, that potential's so good!" So he quit his job, went and started his own company with Carmack and a couple others called ID Software, and put this guy out in 1993. Early example of 3D graphics in video games, right there. id Software, artists for Carmack, Kevin Cloud, Sandy Peterson, who's on X. Actually, I've talked to him a couple of times. Very nice guy. Was involved in level design, but here's the gameplay. It got a little bit better. You were kind of moving along into the first-person shooter world. There's some early designs of their creatures, but the key here was the engine, the graphics engine, the game engine, which wouldn't have been developed without another guy named Steve Jobs and the NeXT computer, because Steve kind of came up with the NeXT after he was kind of ousted from Apple, and then you get Doom. He wasn't done, right? He's like, "Okay, that's good. We've just released the biggest video game ever. We've won a bunch of awards. In fact, Wolfenstein was #1 for a long time, but he wasn't happy, so he goes off and does Doom. Made the most violent video game to ever become a violent video game, at least then. And he was like, awesome, and kind of got better, but he went, "Okay, I'm still not done. Let's go with Doom 2, right? Let's up the ante, right?" So cover art by Braum. If you're into RPGs, you know who Braum is, man. They brought him in to do some cool art. Graphics got a little bit better, right? But again, it was this sort of interplay in between hardware improving, software improving, so they were getting a little bit better graphics, a little bit better gameplay. They were the first ones to allow a deathmatch, which is sort of the predecessor to the massive multiplayer online games you have today. Final Doom. Quake. Now, this one was released after he left, or right as he was leaving id Software, or something like that. And I just finished reading his biography. You'd think I'd remember, but he saw Quake get out the door, I think, and was involved in the right there, game designer, him, Sandy Peterson, the whole nine yards of who's who. They also had to make sure it was effective to work across all these different platforms, which at the time was a lot different than it is today. Gameplay was, again, another level up from where it had been before, because they improved the graphics engine. And we're squeezing every bit of processing power they could out of those early PCs. And Quake, again, revolutionized the industry. Now, the thing I like about the book, and if you haven't read it, highly recommend it. I don't make anything if you buy it, right? I bought it off of Amazon, so I really enjoyed it. But if you look, after he left id Software, he went on to a series of other companies where he was kind of working for other people. He wanted to learn things and try new stuff, so he was working for other people. Started his own company again called Gazillion Entertainment, a few others. And some games went great, some games didn't go so well, a lot of hit or miss stuff. He wrote this one with one of his kids or stepkids, which was kind of a cool idea of a taco truck game, which I thought was cool. Got some stuff coming out under Romero Games Limited now. But the thing I like about his career, and the thing I really like about the book, is that he doesn't just talk about his successes, which, Doom, obviously a huge success. Doom 2, obviously a huge success. Quake, obviously a huge success. He talks about some of his failures too. I do have a long form video over on my YouTube channel where I talk a little bit more in depth about what I liked about the book. But he also gives tips and things in it that could be useful to game developers today, especially when you get to the marketing phase. And it's very good tips for the movie industry, the TTRPG industry, and others when dealing with fans. So, great book. Cannot recommend it highly enough. And check it out today. It's on Amazon. It came out not last year, but the year before. And I'm very glad I found it and brought a copy home. So we'll see everybody soon. Have a great night.